They're not a very big creature. They're only about 3 to 4 feet tall.
And they're about 3.5 to 4 feet tall.
This creature is about 3 feet tall.
They would have been about, in height, probably about 4 feet.
They were only like 3 or 4 feet tall.
All about 4 foot tall.
The creatures were approximately 4 foot.
A friend of mine came through town. We had flown in Southeast Asia together, and he was retiring from the Air Force. He came over, and we started talking about where he had been for the last 15 years. And he mentioned that he had been stationed at Bentwaters. And I said, oh, Bentwaters, that's where the flying saucer supposedly was in 1980. He said, no, John, not supposedly, it was. He said, I don't care if you believe me or not. It landed. I didn't see it because we were confined to quarters, but I know people who did, and I'll give you the names, and if you ever see them, tell them you know me, and they'll tell you the whole story. Since then, I ran into one of the security police who was within 10 feet of the saucer and actually saw the 3 aliens get out and go up to General Gordon Williams, who was the wing commander at that time.
The feeling in the forest was very strange. Movement was odd, perception was odd the minute we entered the forest. I will tell you this, there was a problem. Something was wrong. And there was a phenomena on the ground in this field. It was like a mist. It looked like a fog on the ground. And this thing was there on the ground, and it was filmed and it was photographed. It was so beyond anything, and it's right in front of us. I was at least 30 feet away from it at one point. Too close. There was a life form in association with it, and so I can just cut to the chase, which I perceived, I remember thinking, and you've heard other witnesses say this, and like, as children, what are these children doing here? And the mind starts scrambling. You know, they were humanoid. There was...
you know the height of them?
Yeah, they would have been about, in height, probably about 4 feet, really. I mean, you think of children.
What I took to be a dozen, maybe 15 kids. And I'm shocked by that. And I'm like, Toby, man, what are these kids doing out here in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the night? And he said, Terry, man, look at them. Those ain't no little kids. They're not human beings. Don't you remember? They took us and they hurt us.
Come back, and there was 5 crates there, like 5 or 6, I think it was 5. I lifted one up, and here's this body there and floating in fluid. And I looked at it about 10, 15 seconds, not much more than that. So, and I started to figure, what was that? First, I thought it was a child, because it was small. Then I looked at this head and all, right away, and this was only happened in a matter of seconds. Then I put the end back down, and the head was different, the arms were spindly, the body it was gray. So right at that moment, I figured, I don't know what this thing is.
And we looked out the window, and out at the edge of the lawn was, under the street light, were these 4, which I at first glance thought were kids. And I thought, that's strange, because it's late, and it was kind of not the kind of neighborhood where the kids were out running around. As we stood there, I began to realize that something was off. The movements of these kids were kind of insect-like. They were kind of not fluid like we have. They were just different. Then I saw that they had round heads, bald heads, and long spindly arms and torsos. And I just got this really scary feeling. I wasn't looking at kids.
And then there, standing in front of me, were what I would describe as 3 non-human beings. They're about 3.5 to 4 feet tall, brown, tan in colour, and had large oval heads, large oval black eyes, had long skinny arms. They looked like undeveloped children.
And then I noticed the children, I called them, because they looked like kid-sized people in the yard. It seemed like they had been scattered in various parts of the backyard, but all came together in a line and kind of glided across diagonally the yard into this thing. They were probably about, I called them bullet-shaped, because they were large at the top and then came down, and they didn't really walk, they slid.
There were these beings. They came out of the craft and they started to mimic the children. They were shorter. So as I wouldn't have had the terminology to depict them as a gray, back as a child, I wouldn't have had that terminology. But they were bright, they were shining. So they actually had a translucent appearance to them. They weren't solid gray by any means. So I guess the word I could use is they had an aura. And they were hovering. They weren't actually touching the ground.
This bright light moved out. It was bluish gold. It was about a foot off the ground. It split, and it was only about 4 feet in height from the ground up, but it split away. And 3 individual kind of oblong cocoons of light with this thing in it. These 3 individual things inside it, people or things. These were not walking on the ground, these things, and I wish I never saw this.
And I turn my head and I see these 4, I'm going to call them beings, and they are not walking as you and I walk. They are just gliding across the ground, maybe, I don't know how high off the ground. I couldn't really see that, but they have these little uniforms on. Front 3 were the same size, exactly the same size. Looked exactly the same.
I see this shimmering object. It's like, it's a white outline with like these big black eyes. And initially, like I thought like, this can't be real. Like I can't, I must be making this up, right? Like I must be hallucinating this. Suddenly it became completely solid, completely materialized. And I see this being, it's about 3 to 4 feet tall. Its head is massive, like probably the head alone was about a foot. Very like robotic looking. The whole thing that it was wearing was like one uniform Snow White spacesuit. Like it was very pure white with like this golden insignia in the middle that was constantly changing colors. Sorry, not changing colors, changing symbols. And so that was weird in itself, and suddenly 2 other beings materialized the same exact way right next to it. And initially when I saw that, I wasn't even that scared. I was more scared that I couldn't move, right? Like that was freakier. And I figured, all right, if I look away, these things are gonna be gone. Like I'm dreaming this or something. And I looked around and I like looked back, and now they're just walking around my room like they own the room. And I was terrified. I was like terrified and fascinated because I was like, holy crap, these things are real. Like these stories I've read, people might not have been lying. That was one of the most profound realizations I had. I was like, now I'm one of them too. Now I see what they see. Like now I see why this drives people, right?
And I look back over, and on my door where there was the most light, I saw it. It was maybe about that big. It just had a body like this, eyes turned to the side, and it had 3 tentacles. And it raised them up and it started tapping on my window. I know that what came to me, they're called the Greys. They're not a very big creature. They're only about 3 to 4 feet tall.
You get inside this thing, and it's designed for something that's much smaller than a human being.
Yeah, you can't really stand up till you get to the very center of it.
And how tall are you?
I'm 5'10".
And what do you think this was designed for?
I'd say something close to half my height.
Wow. So these little 3-foot tallish creatures.
Yeah, and the seats were small too. I mean, obviously it was made, for something small.
They were hairless, small, huge eyes, and they just kept staring at me. They were only like 3 or 4 feet tall. Okay.
These creatures, all of them were all about 4 foot tall, 4.5 feet tall. They had very large heads that were shaped larger on the top, and they kind of tapered down. Not to a real sharp point, but just tapered down where they were thin. And they had very large, oval-shaped or almond-shaped, I guess you could say, black eyes. They were so shiny, they had almost a bluish tint to them when the light reflected off of them. Their skin coloration, I think the best way I could describe that is kind of a bluish tinted milky white.
They were kind of a grayish white.
It did not have any hair, no facial hair, no hair in its head, nothing. Skin was almost like porcelain, really.
What color are they? Very pale, very milky. Wait a minute. You know, Bob, that's just the way they look. They can't even be 4 feet tall. How tall? 4.5 feet. They can't even be that tall. My goodness, they're small. Their eyes. They have no lights. Oh, heaven. No lights. It's just brown. It's dark, black, brown.
And they had the same kind of eyes that I saw over the mark in the yard, the big, black, liquidy, shimmery, alive eyes. That's what I call them. The eyes are like living things, you know.
There was a white membrane around what are eyes, large eyes, and the white membrane was moving, adapting. It was like your eyes adjusting to light.
The eyes were very, very captivating. They were very big and very dark. Nothing like I'd ever seen before, and incredibly magnetic, which is, it almost felt like it took effort for me to break that gaze.
Large black eyes, like elongated heads, like enlarged heads, very longer, thinner necks, not too long, but longer, thinner necks. Their limbs were more flimsy, almost.
Very in like a human-esque form, but much shorter. Really big head, really big eyes. If it did have a nose, couldn't really see it. But also the skin pigmentation was very, very different. It was very odd. It was nothing like I'd ever seen before.
The fingers had no thumbs, just four fingers. Suction devices on their tips of their fingers.
The heads were somewhat larger than a human heads. The hands were long, no thumbs. It was just the long, very delicate fingers at the end of on the underside at the tip of each fingers was a pad-like, maybe a little pad, but it looked like the skin had maybe a little suction, like the little suction cups on those.
Did you see fingers?
Yeah, they had fingers like this. They didn't have a little finger. They just had the thumb, had 3 extra digits, except the center digit was longer, and the other 2 were about the same size. They were very long and slender. They looked very delicate.
They're very thin. They do have 2 arms, 2 legs. The arms are longer than our arms. The hands are very different. The ones I saw had only 4 fingers, basically. One could have been a thumb and 3 fingers. They're longer. They had what appeared to be, to me, a kind of a fleshy pad on the end of the fingertips, almost like a suction pad, like on a frog.
There's 2 of them standing there. Mm-hmm. Real long figures. Big head. Big head? Yeah. And dark eyes. Dark eyes? Here they come. What color hair does he have? You don't have no hair. No hair? Well, you should be able to see his ears real well. You don't have any ears. No ears? So, does he have a mouth? Like a coin slot. Like a coin slot.
It was short. It had a very large, round, hairless head. It had long black eyes, jet black eyes. It had small nostrils, no ears, and a slit of a mouth. Its neck was long, almost shaped like that of a crane.
But the creatures were approximately 4 foot. They had didn't appear to have any ears. They had an indentation for the nose, very, very big eyes.
How about ears, nose, mouth?
No, there was no visible ears on the creatures, except like if you was just to cover your ear like this, to where there was just a rise there and then a hole, without your earlobe and the rest of the ear there.
How about nose?
It was the nose was very, very small, almost imperceptible, and just like 2 holes straight in, and the lips were just a straight line, just like a cut, and you couldn't see any visible lips like we have. It was just a slit.
The ears, there was only 2 small orifices on each side of the head, but there was not a protruding ear. And also that the nose, there was only 2 small orifices in the nose. There was really no nose that was convex. It was, the lips were very just a long, narrow, more or less, not full lips like we would have in most of our people.
Do they have a mouth? Straight line. No lips. It's weird. Do they talk through their mouth? I don't hear no talking. How can they breathe with no nose?
They had larger eyes than ours, smaller nose, and smaller mouth. No protruding part of the ear and no hair. But they're people.
They have very large heads. They're probably about 3.5 to maybe 4 feet tall. The eyes are very dark, slanted, larger than human eyes. The mouth is nothing but a slit. I didn't notice any ears. The nose, to me, all I could see was just a little, tiny little structure. It didn't look like it was really used.
Now, when this being comes in this world, he will wear a suit, skin-tight suit, which we found. His skin is atomically aligned, and his suit is atomically aligned. That's to repel radiation and harmful effects.
They're dressed alike. They're wearing some kind of suit. Some kind of leotards of some sort.
And then we saw something shiny, so we all ran down over there. And we saw two people. They were in tight black suit. And they had big eyes. And a small, we didn't actually see their nose, but it was quite small. And their mouth was quite small as well.
I woke up and I was paralyzed. And I was awake, but I couldn't move. And I became aware of a little being standing by my bed right there. And I noticed he was right even with the doorknob, so he was no taller than his head top of his head came to the doorknob. I love this look. And
I don't want to see one of these guys.
Well, he really basically ignored me. He had kind of a mushroom-colored big head, and he was a little skinny body, and he was wearing, I know this sounds crazy, it all does, but he was wearing this little tight-fitting jumpsuit, dark jumpsuit.
And the closest thing that I could compare what it was wearing would be something like a scuba diving suit. It was just very form-fitting, very black, a little shiny.
They had a really tight-fitting suit, almost looked like they were nude, but they actually had a very thin but tight-fitting suit on.
They were wearing one-piece suits. All of them were dressed exactly the same, and it was sort of a real shiny, silverish gray color.
No zippers, buttons?
No, I saw no zippers, no buttons.
Insignia?
No.
And then all of a sudden I just see these 2 small beings just appear right by my window in my room, and they were wearing this like tight-fitting, silvery, glittering, shining body suit type thing.
I followed a small gray in front of me, little legs, and like a little gray type like spandex suit or something on, I guess.
and the creature wore a garment which covered it from the soles of its feet right up to its neck. The garment reached up to the creature's wrists.
And since he doesn't speak, he has no vocal cords, he will have something that intensifies that transmission, that he maybe can communicate.
And I felt this pounding sensation in my whole body and my whole head. This voice just said, "Come with us." And that was it. I didn't question it. I just went.
And all of a sudden, it just turned and looked right straight at me, between my Uncle Ted and myself. And this is when there was just like an explosion of things in my head. Things I started, feeling just terrible depression, and loneliness, and fear, and just, awful feelings. It just suddenly burst into my mind, and I don't know if that meant that it was communicating with me, and I was the only one there I could communicate with because I was a kid. I don't know. Never heard a sound one.
They were right in front of us, in front of Liesl and myself. Now, I was not the only child that experienced a communication with the beings, but Liesl and myself, I can only speak to my own. Liesl and myself were frozen, and time had stopped, and it was like we were in this communication immediately with this being, and the only way that I can describe it is as it being neurological and telepathic. It was like a slideshow of images being flooded throughout my head. What I got most out of that was the emotional response, because there were so many emotions that were flooding through me. It was sadness, it was joy, it was elation, it was fear, a fear of the unknown.
And when they turned and looked at me, it was like all kinds of emotions just surged to the surface at once. When they told me to get up, and it was okay. I heard the voice, but I did not see the lips move. I heard it as clear as you hear my voice. You heard it in English. In English. I was in English. Yeah.
Witnesses are coming out now saying, unbeknownst to us, there were 3 massive triangular objects over the base, over the forest, and over the Woodbridge base the whole time.
It glided in, absolutely silent, never heard a single noise. It finally stopped over the top of this plateau, and it's enormous. It's a city block long on each leg of the triangle. So from our vantage point, we're looking at this thing. It's 3,000 feet above us over the meadow, and absolutely silent, and it's as big as a Walmart,
So the characterizations that we have seen to date really is a result of size, believe it or not. So, and this is by no means comprehensive, but what we tend to see are the smaller vehicles tend to be think of a sports car, are your saucer-shaped vehicles. The large ones, really large ones, tend to be not always, but almost exclusively either triangular shape or boomerang shape.
There came this laser beam from the same spot. We could trace it all the way up to the center of this thing in the sky, and it would land in the campsite for someplace for like 1/10 of a second, and then reappear in another place, and then reappear. So 10 times a second, this thing is dancing all over the campsite. Lasers were kind of a new concept in 1977. I'd only seen them on television. This is the first time I ever saw one in real life. It was about the diameter of a pencil, and it was purplish blue, and it struck me in the chest a couple times. I never felt a thing. And it seemed, it didn't seem, it hit everything that we brought with us.
Charles Halt was pursuing other light phenomena with getting beams fired down to the ground right in front of him. Literally pencil-sized beams from these crescent-like phenomena. Making a recording as it all happened. 4 hours of audio, you've got 18 minutes of dynamite.
Let's move out to the edge of the clearing so we can get a better look at it. See if you can get the star scope on it. The light's still there, and all the barnyard animals have gotten quiet now. Yellow? It's coming this way. It is definitely coming this way. Pieces of it are shooting off. There is no doubt about it. This is weird. Now we're observing what appears to be a beam coming down to the ground. This is unreal.
He says, you know you have a couple of burns on your body, right? And I said, excuse me? He goes, yeah, above your right eye and on the back of your right hand. Well, I didn't have a glove on this hand, and then my beret came down like this, you know, as my beret was on my head, and it burned me right above my eyebrow right there.
I was seriously burned. Toby was African American, so he didn't burn, but he was burnt. He was hurting. He could feel that he'd been burned. And I was just red all over my body. I mean, the soles of my feet were red. My scalp, I mean, everywhere I'm red. And I mean, I never took my shirt off, never took my pants off. But I'm burned all over. And the doctor's like, why didn't you put on, some kind of sunscreen or something? And, how did you get burned like this? And I'm like, Doc, I never took my boots, my shirt off, my pants off. I have no idea. And I suffered what they call flash burns. It's the same kind of burn an arc welder would get if they didn't wear that hood over their face while they're welding. And what it is it's a sunburn to the cornea of your eye.
My eyes were damaged, flash burns to the retinas and all. This is established as if I'd stared at an arc welder's torch for about 10 minutes, which is unadvisable.
I was so sick and my eyes were completely swelled shut. And so my mom actually ended up taking me to the emergency room. From the emergency room, I was taken to an eye doctor whose office was across the street from the emergency room. One of the first things he asked me is if I had looked into the arc of a welder's torch, which I was like, no.
There's a reason why the 6 observable is biological effects. Okay. People after an encounter experiencing certain physiological and psychological things.
And I know you said you don't have data that's quantifiable, but I'm curious about this hitchhiker effect or the 6th observable. Is that associated with proximity to the craft or length of time looking at the craft, like another variable?
Damn, Kurt,
what is associated with
your
this?
Great questions, man. Let me take a pass on that for now. Let me that will be addressed.
Sure.
There is a fundamental difference between, and I don't want to fearmonger, I'm not saying these things are hostile intent. Threat and hostile intent can be 2 entirely different things. Hostile intent is the willful, if you will, desire to create harm. Whereas threat, you can have involuntary threats, you can have environmental threats. If I get on an airplane, there's no threat. But if I get to the back of the engine of that same airplane while it's throttling up, there's definitely a threat. There's a biological threat to me, right? I'm going to get burned. I might lose my hearing. So we're still trying to determine that.
What's the rationale? What's the reasoning intent behind it? We don't know. But that is communication. If when we do a show of force, and if we fly an SR-71 at 100,000 feet and we don't want the enemy to see us. But if I take a couple F-22 Raptors and I fly off the coast of, let's say, a disputed territory in the South China Sea, I'm communicating with a country. It may not be through dialogue, but make no mistake, I'm communicating very clearly and very effectively my intent to another party. And so I think therein lies the question: are these things trying to communicate with us? And if so, will we be smart enough to recognize it as some sort of communication versus just 2 ships passing in the night?
There is a strong undercurrent in our country of individuals in our government, particularly, that know the seriousness of this topic. Whether or not these are real, that's no longer up for debate. This is a fact. We're here, folks. The question is, what is it? Where is it from? What is its intent? And what can or should we be doing about it?